You are a pervert, sir.
Thank you.
No problem.
You know who's the biggest perv of all?
Who?
Rio.
No, he's not. He's not a pervert. He's completely oblivious to the fact that everyone he's ever interacted with wants to bone him.
Which is exactly why I suspect something.
It's bad. Anime.
So, are we live?
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm John.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Bad Anime, the show where we decide, is this anime bad?
Yes, whenever I should say again, I mentioned this before, but whenever we're remote, I'm gonna not do the intro with my buddy Bouncy here because you just can't sync that shit up right over.
You can't do it. Zoom is not good at that. It's good at many other things, like letting me see butts, but otherwise it's not very good.
I did not moon him, by the way. I don't know why he said that. Actually, no, I do. He mooned me at the start of this little extravaganza today, and I was like, okay, I'm glad we have the right tone.
You should have expected that. I literally sent I sent you the Zoom link and then a text message that said, "Come see my ass," and then you came into the Zoom and you were like, "Oh boy," and I was like, "I told you to come see my ass."
Well, no, I never at any point said I was surprised. I was just like, yep, okay, that's where we are today. No,
Rio is a shit character, and I do not respect him.
Wow, okay, wow, we haven't even introduced the show yet, and we're already. Well, here's the interesting part because we've already touched on this show before. Back in the summer when this originally aired, we and as we started recording for the podcast, as you guys know, we did a little 3-episode rule on a show called Seirei Gensoki, not Seiri, probably, as I mispronounced it the first time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Seirei Gensoki, Spirit Chronicles is the English title, and which is how we'll refer to the show going forward. We did a review of the first 3 episodes, which, from everything I remember, which is surprisingly a lot about the first 3 episodes, it was a nice little self-contained arc, and it seemed like the start of the story. And I said to myself, boy, that pacing of the narrative was out of control. I hope it slows down.
It was nuts. We went back and forth many a time in the first time we covered this show about how crazy the time skips were, especially in those first few episodes. Oh, yeah. I think they did a 5-year time skip in that, like in the second episode or something like that.
Yeah. So, by the time the first 3 episodes ended, they were already 5 or 6 years advanced in the story from where it started in the very first scene. So we're already in for a lot here. But generally, we told ourselves, you know what? The show is not perfect by any way, but there's some charm to it. So you were a little undecided about it. I said, you know what? I'm gonna stick with it. And episode 4, if I'm not mistaken, just came out that day. So before you left my apartment that day, I'm like, you want to crack some beers and just watch episode 4 real quick?
And so we did.
And our reaction to episode 4, mine was a tiny bit stronger than yours, where I'm just like, okay, this is more of what I wanted. It was our new main man Rio / Haruto because he's an isekai protagonist. He has the memories of some 20-year-old Japanese boy in him, and that really doesn't come into play enough. That only comes up.
It really doesn't.
It only comes up when the writers remember they wrote an isekai. But anyway, so you got. Again, the 4th episode, I remember this very well, and this is hysterical to me that I remember this one particularly well because we'll get on to the later series, and my memory fades a bit. It opens up. Rio just goes to some town where everyone's speaking in like an Osakan dialect. We watched the subbed, obviously, because this is before there was a dub, and we'll get to that later.
Which
as well.
it did get a dub, which we can explain a bit.
And it's getting a season 2, which is something I actually had to call you about immediately because I'm like, it's getting a season 2, and you said, what's getting a season 2? I said Spirit Chronicles. You didn't hang up, but I could hear that you wanted to.
It was a very depressing phone call.
But anyway, so this episode it was honestly because people asked me about this show and I said there is a good show in here somewhere because in episode 4, which to me was like the impetus of me saying that because it's Rio going to this town, everyone's speaking Osakan Japanese for no reason. They have the Osakan dialect. I'm hearing that as someone who spent a semester there and know enough about the language to pick up on that. I'm like, okay, sure, shop clerks, whatever, and I just couldn't get out of my head. And the next thing you know, Rio's just buying a bunch of fucking spaghetti or whatever. And And
He
there's
did
this
buy a lot of spaghetti.
and there's this little fox girl. This, at this point he's probably 12, and this 9-year-old fox girl tries to kill him, sent by one of the dickhead families from from the kingdom he fled from. And so she tries to kill him. He fights back. He actually destroys the collar controlling this little girl. She has this magical little collar controlling her actions. This is how the family controlled her. And so Rio breaks the collar, says, "I'm not going to kill you. Go have your own life. You're free now." She's like terrified, this terrified little child. And she, at one point, this scene that actually did get me, where like she presents him the collar and says, "Please put it back on me. Like, you can control me.
Yeah.
I don't want to be alone." That scene got me pretty hard. I'm like, oh my god, is this show gonna be something? Okay, then some other things happened.
And then the rest of the season happened.
Well, then Rio's like, "No, that's really fucked up and sad that you'd ask me that. I guess you can come travel with me, whatever." So, they start, they go on this journey together. There's rumors of this big beast village, and Rio's like, "Well, it's kind of on the way of where I'm going anyway. I'll drop you off so you can be with more beastkin, more of your own kind." And this is where my first disappointment happened, because I would have been so happy if the rest of the season of this show was just the two of them going to the Beast Village. If they was just
Yes.
that, I would have enjoyed that. Instead, there were several montages of them crossing different biodomes, fighting giant monsters, and I'm like, oh, this pacing problem's going to continue. As you could tell, people, it's a lot of our problems with the show. We've talked about this briefly in the past. This show just moves so fast, so much that I had to invest. I actually investigated why this is moving so fast. I'm like, there's no way this is an active decision. Why is it moving so fast? Sure enough, this is like most modern anime. It's based off a series of light novels. So odds are I might pick one of them up in the future. Bounty's not going to read any of them because it's just words with the occasional picture.
It's
So-
words on paper. Why would I do that?
So he's out. So he's hard out. But anyway,
No.
so I'm looking this up, and by the time Spirit Chronicles debuted on TV, there's already 20 of these books written. I'm like, that's a big number. So, and usually a lot of adaptations I've seen, a lot of shows for their first season maybe adapt a book and a part of the second, maybe the first 2 books. Spirit Chronicles picked a lot from the first 5 books, so they just had all this material, presumably they had to get through. So as you're watching the show, they just randomly speed up and slow down. It feels like someone's sitting on a remote, and it's randomly slowing down, speeding up, rewinding, pausing, and fast forwarding. It's madness to watch this show. But-
Okay.
Okay.
So that's the thing. The thing about it, right?
Yes.
We did the first 3, and the
Yes.
first 3 they were silly. They were really silly in my opinion. But we did it. We watched the
Yeah.
4th together, and I was like, okay, Rob, let me know if it gets good, because you were like, all right, I'm gonna keep watching it. I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear from you whether it got good or not, but I did hear from you. The text that I did receive was something along the lines of, "We got to cover season 1." And I was like, okay, this could mean a lot of different things. But given the direction that the show was going at the time, I didn't have my highest hopes that it was going to be good at all. But, I'm along for the ride. It was really fun to talk about those first 3 episodes and the absolute
Right.
shitstorm of dumb things that happened. So I figured, okay, great. But the thing that really, really got me over the edge, kind of about what the time skips you're talking about, right? My favorite thing about that is when Rio's like, all right, Latifah, Fox Girl, you and me, we're going to go to this village and we're going to meet some beast people and you can be with your own kind. And she's like, woohoo! And as you said, I would have been very fine with the rest of the show, the rest of the whole season being, okay, let's get to the beast land. Great.
Yeah.
Where is it? It's far. All right. But instead, what we got treated to was various screenshots of them in different, as you said, biomes. They were in like a desert land fighting birds. Ooh, they were in a grassland killing boars. Ooh. And then after that, approximately 1 minute and 35 seconds, Rio's like, wow, can't believe we got to the Beast Village. Boy, was I like, no, okay. This show is just on an absolute ride, and it will not be changing its silly pacing anytime soon throughout the course of the season. And we
And
were
it's
correct.
and it's so disappointing because apparently, him meeting Latifah, their trip to the Beast Village and their introduction to the Beast Village, that's a whole book. And I'm just
Wow.
like, and I'm like, God damn it, because clearly, the author's name escapes me, but whoever's writing this has an idea of now how narrative structure and pacing works. They're like, okay, we have a really cool journey here, but like I said, they're up to book 20, and so now they have to get, they want to really speed this up along in the adaptation, I assume. So like, from what I remember looking up, they definitely used everything from four of the first five and had elements of the maybe the fourth or fifth one. They changed up the order. The fan base got mad, and I'm like, why are you getting mad about this? I mean, it's like
It's
everyone needs to settle down here. This is
oh
Spirit
god.
Chronicles, and it's just so funny because what happens with this adaptation process is that characters get completely stripped of their personality, and now aspects of their personality can only be hinted at. I'm entirely talking about Rio here, our main boy,
Oh
because
god. Rio.
they try to add dimension to his character, but through I don't want to blame the writers of the show for doing this because they're obviously shackled with this conditions that they have. They have to like only imply certain aspects of his character and bring him up whenever they have a time to bring it up because
Yeah.
they want to give him death. There's this nice little undercurrent that he can actually be a kind of a sadistic fuck and a little violent because of how troubled his past was. If you want more of a explanation on that, I guess you can go watch our 3 episode rule on Spirit Chronicles and see that Rio's childhood was a bit fucked up. So,
Yeah. A bit messed up. Yes.
so it's very understandable to reason he can have like violent tendencies because of that. And the show hints at it maybe 2 or 3 times. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
you guys clearly know what you want to do here. You want to make this character well-rounded. They just don't have the time to do it. So the entire time I'm watching this show, I'm almost feel bad for the people producing it because they're trying, the writers particularly, not so much the animation department or whatever. We'll get into like those aspects of the show in a minute, but it's a lot of people here trying their best, but I assume just being dealt such a shitty hand.
Yeah. And I think that something very striking about this whole season of Spirit Chronicles, and we can start with specifics because every time there were so many just distinct patterns that matched up throughout the season, and every
Oh
few
yeah.
episodes the same kind of thing would happen but in just a different kind of setting. So right when they
Oh yeah.
leave to go to the Beast Village, they get there and it's this like giant tree. And first of
Yep.
all, Rio is our Chad boy because he's just so good at everything he does. He just has not stopped. Nobody is able to take him, and we'll go even more in depth onto that as we
Yes.
continue.
Right.
But right, he's able to first of all see this big tree in this Beast Village, and everybody's like, "Wow, how can you even know that this exists?" And he's like, "I don't know. I do magic and shit. I guess." And
I
then
do magic.
he and Latifah before reaching this Beast Village, they are accosted by a bunch of, you guessed it, hot Griffin girls. And these hot Griffin girls take them hostage, and Rio's like, "I don't want to fight you." And they're all, and some of them are like, "Oh, he's going peacefully." And this other one who is like, "Oh no, let's take him down. He's a human." And she just whacks him on the back of the head. He wakes up as a hostage.
I
'Cause
do
they
have to
thought-
interject right here.
Yes,
because
please.
this shows a sign of the show's intelligence here because there is someone smart working on this show. And what happened was
I would go as far to say one person is smart working on this show.
well
A
exactly,
single
but,
person.
well cuz here's how this because it's an unfortunate series of events where like the beast folk kidnapped him. What happened is Latifah was having a very bad nightmare because her past is also very fucked up. Trend here.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah, she's a slave assassin fox girl, so things are not clearly going her way. She's having a horrible nightmare, and Rio uses some of his weird magical shit to sedate her and put rest her to sleep. They find Rio with an unconscious fox girl, and they're able, mages, whatever, they're able to detect, like, you knocked her out with magic. You clearly kidnapped this person, this
Yeah.
girl. And he's like, fuck, this looks terrible. So,
I have an unconscious fox woman in
Yes.
my hut. And
Yeah.
everybody's like, what'd you do? And he's like, guys, I swear I did not roofie her. It's okay. And they're like, you probably roofie. From my
Yeah.
angle, even, I was like, yeah, you probably did it, honestly.
Well, that's the thing, because like it's a cliche what they're doing here, the music communication bit, right? But there is intelligence here because like that was pulled off pretty well. It's like, and it shows Rio does care for Latifah quite a bit already in their short time together. I'm like, but the whole scenario is stupid. Her Rio gets kidnapped again, which is a
Yeah, again.
reoccurring trend in and of itself. But I'm saying to myself like, where's the one guy with like talent here? And I want to shake his hand.
I feel like I sent you a text on this when Rio gets like kidnapped. Once again, I was like, he's got some kind of like kidnap fetish, because this dude has been kidnapped so many times and he always gets out of it. Like when he was kidnapped, right? They bring him to like the Beast Village and whatever, and
Yeah.
he's in like a bed laying around, and then he finally wakes up and everybody's like, "Hey,
Well, no, what they
sorry?"
wow. It's so funny because I thought I didn't remember too much of the show until you started bringing it up. I'm like, wait, I remember shit now. Because again, there's some scenes in the show I really enjoyed where Latifah, the fox girl, wakes up, charges in. It's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? And they're like, and all of them look at each other and went, oh no, we did fuck up. He was telling the truth. Uh-oh. So again, moments like this, I was as I'm watching the show, I'm like, are you good? Are you good or not? Please tell me, because I don't. This is only like episode 5 or 6 has probably happened, like so probably around the waypoint of the show where I'm like, are you good? I don't know.
But then like the classic thing happens where like, okay, right? So then like Rio gets kidnapped. That already happened before. And then it gets revealed, of course, it was a miscommunication, right? And Latifah's actually safe. She's actually good. And all the Beast Girls are like, oh, we're sorry for totally kidnapping you, bro. But we also all want to ride your peen. So everybody falls in love with him immediately, wherever he goes. Breaks a lot of hearts, this goddamn son of a bitch. And then he, of course, gets to their elders. And their elders are like, wow, we can see that you're very amazing and you're really cool and stuff. And I'm like, you don't know him.
Yeah,
And then
like, that was everything that happened. They were just like, we could tell you fuck. And he's like, yeah, I do.
He was like, yeah, I do, but not really. I got more important things to do than worry about Griffin females. And they're like, wow, we respect that, hustle boy. Let's we're gonna build you a house. And then they just construct. At first he lives with them, of course, because
For a
they're
while,
like, all
it's
right,
like a year or two.
it's like 2 years because he is like, all right, I want to stay with Latifah to make sure that her transition is easy into living at this Beast Village. And then after 2 years, I'm going to do the Rio. I'm going to head out. I'm going to go to another place across the world and just continue a journey to basically Japan is where I want to go. And they're like, okay, yeah, stick around for 2 years. You can have like this nice like Three's Company kind of thing with like you living with like 5 different Griffin women. And Latifah, and that's gonna be cool, and then he does.
Yeah, that he does, and I'm so glad you brought this up because this becomes a trend. But this is the first example where Rio's like, all right, time for me to go do my own thing. I'm gonna go fuck off to what is the stand-in essentially for feudal Japan.
Yes,
so medieval feudal Japan. So because early in the season they talked about he was an outsider in the kingdom he came from, and his mom got assassinated. So clearly. It's implied there where if his mother's getting assassinated, she's probably someone important. So Rio's now on a mission to be like, who am I and where am I from? So he fucks off to, he finds his way to rural Japan. I forget how long it takes him, but he's there. I think, is this the point where they gave him all like the, is this where they...
I'll tell you how long it took him. It took him 2 screenshots to get there. And he finally ends up in feudal Japan after probably just like maybe a quarter of an episode.
Yeah, so he's there and he's like, hey, I'm Rio. And of course, every young female in town goes, oh, that's Rio. I don't know who he is, but I want it. And so people start fawning over him. And correct me if I'm wrong, we learn pretty quickly he's actually royalty, because of course he is.
Yeah, of course. Well, he of course like walks in and he's like, oh, he like meets this girl who's like, like picking turnips or some shit, and he's like, hey, do you know who the leader of your village is? Yeah. He's like, hey, do you know who like the leader of this village is? And she's like, oh, a random traveler with a sword. Yeah, I'll take you to where our leader is. And he's like, cool, thank you so much. And everybody's like, wow, he's hot. And I'm like, he just walked into this field with a sword, and everybody's just gonna turn around and be like, he's hot enough and cool looking enough that he won't try anything.
Yeah.
And they take him to the leader of the village, who, like, of course, within like about a scene is like, oh, wow, so you think you're from here? And he's like, yeah, I think so. At least my mom told me that I should come here. And he's like, wow, guess what, bro? I'm your grandma.
Yep. And yeah, I
His
mean,
grandma is the head of the village.
yep.
It's the head of this village. It's just
it
like
was-
that. Just like that. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Travels across the world. The first village he goes to, hey, where's your leader? The leader's like, hey, I'm your grandma. By the way, you're royalty. You're part of the royal family. Your mother and father fled because they had unrequited love. And you have to reclaim your place on the throne if you want it. He's like, wow, yeah. I mean, that all makes sense.
And then he just like goes to the market with some girls, and like they buy him, like he buys one of them an earring or something. I don't remember. There's like
Yeah,
charms.
In classic Rio fashion, once again, he gets there and everybody's like, this guy is the dude. I want him to have my babies and my daughter's babies. And this one girl is really, really into him. I can't remember her name for the life of me, but her brother became my favorite character in the show because for one whole episode, Rio's coming in, right? Rio's in this village now, like, because now he's going to live here for 2 years, apparently.
Right.
Living with his grandma and his cousin, I guess, who doesn't know she's his cousin yet. And then he starts to, like, do things like, I don't know, be just a generally average human being and pick turnips. And everybody's like, he's amazing. And then he, of course, with his magic, which is just unfathomable, builds an entire Japanese bathhouse within 2 seconds from a spell that he uses on the ground. Straight out of Architectural Digest, this thing. And everybody's like, wow, a bathhouse? What's a bath? And everybody starts using this bathhouse.
I love that, where it's like, what's a bath? It's like, wow, this place must smell horrible.
Horrible. And then, as I mentioned, there's that one guy that's the brother of the girl that really likes Rio in this village. And he's like, that Rio guy, he's not so great. He's okay. And I'm like, finally.
Conflict.
Somebody that's conflict. Exactly. Oh, God. Somebody that doesn't immediately just want him to be his son. Like, finally.
Yeah, no, that happened a lot in the mid-season, looking back on it now. And it was, I'm trying to remember, because Rio beat the hell out of someone nearly to death in this village. Was that the brother, or was that some other dude?
No,
okay,
so...
Those were like the random travelers.
Yeah, it was like a group of random travelers that came to the village, and
one of them, one of them straight up, like, doesn't one of them try to straight up rape two of the girls? And Rio's like, no.
Yep.
And Rio,
one of them just like breaks into the grandma's house and like wants to sexually assault the girl that really likes Rio and Rio's cousin. And then Rio knows that somebody's broken into the house, so he just takes this man and just beats the ever-loving garbage out of him on the floor, and he's all bloody.
And I was happy this happened because it showed that, okay, are we actually going to address the fact that Rio does have violent tendencies? He seems like a nice enough kid because he was taught to be that way, but he's so fucked up, he should have these violent tendencies. I'm like, oh my god, are we going to get some form of character depth, like 9 episodes into this 12-episode show? And then the show just kind of went, nah, he's actually going to go fuck up back to the Beast Village for a minute because he misses Latifah. And he's just like, the thing, he spent years trying to get to this goddamn village. And he's like, royalty there. He's like, yeah, but my Fox girl sister misses me, and then I'm going to go see my teacher from the first part of the season.
And everybody's like, all right. Whatever you gotta do.
They're like, we wish you didn't do that, about to be prince of our village, but yeah, we get it. Bye?
Yeah, there are 2 things that I want to bring up in this time frame as well. So when he does beat the hell out of that random guy, right? That like random traveler guy. It's all bloody and it's a terrible affair. And as you said, we would think that like, oh, are they actually pushing something in his character forward?
Right.
And right after he beats that guy up, everybody in the village, well, while he's doing it, everybody in the village is like, Rio, stop, no, you can't do that. I know he's a bad man, but you can't, and you're gonna kill him. And then they pull him off, right? And Rio stops beating him
Right.
up, and he's like, sorry, everybody. I guess I got a little carried away. And everybody's like, you would think that at this moment they would like, I don't know, maybe like shun him from the village or,
Or
be
just
like,
show
oh,
an ounce of concern.
right, like Rio's not the great guy we thought. He like almost killed this man, even though this man's a bad man. Like, you don't kill people. And they're all just like, nah, dude, it's totally cool. Like, you're good, man. Like, hey, listen, like, it's fine. It's fine. Sometimes you flip out a little bit, you beat the hell out of somebody. I would have done it too. I would have done it too, brother.
I mean, he tried to rape your cousin. I mean, just go for it. I'm like, actually, no, to be fair, I think the people in the village are right on this. I think Rio was totally justified.
I think they are right on this, but it was also
But
they alluded
the
to like they weren't at first, and then they were all like, nah, never mind. It's cool.
Yeah, it got a little weird there because it felt like there was going to be that typical, like, we shun you storyline. You are dangerous. But I kind of like the realism where they're like, nah, he tried to do something fucking horrible, and you didn't kill him. So good job, bro.
Yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to mention before we leave the feudal Japan world is that when Rio meets like the current king and queen of the of the capital, I guess they go to the capital city, and he meets like the king and queen because he like saves somebody or does something like Chad like, right? And then he's
Rio.
there. And they're like, oh, you're like the son of this royal who is very important to us, like my sister or something like that. So he's basically the heir to the throne, whatever. But
Yeah.
what happens is there's this other guy, and they're like, oh, like we know you're gonna leave, but like while you're here, let's test your abilities and stuff, and like spirit magic stuff. And he's like, yeah, sure. And then this is the only other character whose name I remember, Goki.
Goki, okay.
Goki is like a swordsman, and he's like basically the head of military. And
I do
they're
remember
like,
this guy.
we want you to like test your might against our boy Goki, who's the best swordsman in the entire world. And oh yeah, test your might. And then they decide to do a mock battle with Rio and Goki, and I'm like, all right, good. This is a chance for Rio to get a little humbled, This is a good time
lose.
to lose, right? For somebody to be like, he's like the biggest swordsman in the world. Like, he's really good at what he does. Like, all right, like this is the time.
Right.
This is the time for Rio to like take the L, get better. Rio wipes the floor with this man.
And that's where you learn Rio doesn't take L's. He is he basically is just a walking W. It is absurd.
Impervious to L's. Impervious. Oh my
because
god.
When you get kidnapped like 2 or 3 times when you're like when you're an adolescent, somehow that makes you God. And we didn't even touch on the fact that Rio has this. We come to find out because the show doesn't really do a whole lot talking about it, even though the show is named Spirit Chronicles. Presumably, after the fact, there's this spirit living inside Rio. I forget her name. She's got really long pink hair, and after Rio says "fuck off" to the village, everyone's super sad. But he's like, "No, got to go see my younger fox girl sister," and everyone's like, "That sentence did not make sense." But have fun, champ. So he goes back to the Beast Village. Everyone's a little older, of course. And there's even a scene or two where like there's some weird suggested sexual tension there between Rio and Latifah now, and I'm like, God damn it, Japan! God damn it!
He's like, yeah, God damn it! He's like sitting. But they have this conversation. They're like, I see you as a sister, and she's like, yeah, I see you as my big brother. And then he's like sitting in presumably another fucking Japanese bathhouse that he built in 25 seconds, and. She's like, do you mind if I rub your back? And he's like, that's weird. And she's like, I'm going to do it anyways, or I'll scream. And he's like, okay.
And then she's like, God damn, your shoulders are broad. It's like, oh no.
Damn it. Oh God.
Just a whole lot of damn it. Yeah. And because again, as someone like, I'm rooting for these two, like the relationship is so, like, it's so wholesome. And I'm like, oh, why did we have to introduce boning into all of this? Like, why did we have to bring that prospect in? Rio's got his hands full with every other girl he's ever met. And next thing you know, this giant like this pink-haired spirit girl just pops out of him one day and says, "What's up, Haruto?" And he's like, "How do you know the name of the guy dude living inside me?" She's like, "I follow you to the death, Haruto." It's like, okay, we don't know who you are, ma'am.
Yeah,
Uh,
what's your deal, pink hair lady?
and then
Spirit.
somehow Rio's like, "I'm gonna go see how Celia's doing real quick. I'm gonna hold on, guys. I know I just got back to the Beast Village, but
Out of
I'm gonna go,
out of
I'm gonna go,
nowhere.
I'm gonna go dip back to the kingdom." I told my teacher who was only 5 years older than me that I would write her, and I didn't do that. So let me go. They openly admit it's like, yeah, writing you became too tough. I just stopped doing that, and I'm just like, again, love the show's take on realism there. I got to give it credit.
Which is very funny, actually. I'm actually really happy that they addressed that because, in the first
Yeah,
few episodes when he flees like the royal capital or whatever where
he
Salia
does
is,
try to write, yeah,
he does. He's like,
and
oh yeah,
he
I'll
uses
write you.
Haruto as like a pseudonym and anything. So it's
Hmm.
it's nice, but then they address like, okay, yeah, I just didn't do that. Sorry. Again, love that. But then
Just fun.
he learns that Celia is about to marry Charles the blah, 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 blah.
Charles Arbor, Lord
Yeah,
Charles Arbor, who
which
has the same energy as this is what I wanted to tell you before.
okay,
Same exact energy as
what's his
that
name?
that
Yeah,
character from Darling in the Franxx. That's like Iota.
yeah. Was that who was that? He was one of the nines. I forgot who it
He's one of the
was.
nines. Yeah,
Was it
like
Nine
the
Alpha?
lead. Not Alpha. Yeah, Alpha. Same exact energy.
Iota. Yep.
Iota.
Who knows what it's going to be like in the dub? We might have to watch an episode of the dub and see how they casted everybody.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that'd be very interesting.
so freaking. And Rio's like, "Oh no, the douche." And also, what was the name again? Uh, the guy's name, because I need to comment on something.
Oh, Charles Arbor.
Yeah, that's supposed to be Shar Aznable from Gundam, because anime just loves taking Shar Aznable and just like putting his like thinly disguising his name. Anyway, fuck you guys. High School DxD was the worst with that. Just
Oh
just
no.
taking misappropriated Gundam names, just throwing them in there. And I'm like, I get it. I get it. Most people there like Gundam. I love Gundam. We can lay off a little bit on all the goddamn homages. There's other shows.
Justice for Kiba.
Justice for Kiba. Okay, we'll get to that.
And no
That's
one
a
else. And nobody else.
and no one else. Okay, we know who your waifu is. We're gonna get back to High School DxD in a much later date. But
Yeah.
anyway, so this is all happening, and Rio's like, "Well, I'm gonna fuck shit up." And
Yep.
of course, now and if he didn't already have the deck so stacked in his favor, he has this pink-haired spirit girl next to him with all the same magical powers as he does that spawned out of him. And she's like, "Yeah, whatever you want to do, bro, I got you." So he's just like, all right, we're gonna spring my teacher from this terrible wedding. And hold on, let me just dye my hair real quick, because he has this magical crystal in his ear now that dyes
Okay.
his hair from black to blonde. And he's like, I think that's all I needed to do, right? And then fucking the spirit's like, yeah, you look good, King.
Which
And
is which is another very small thing that I would like to bring up, and I'm happy you brought up the hair dye thing,
mm,
because every time, okay, right, so he's left. Let's keep track of this, right? We don't know where the fuck he's planning on going anymore. He has
right,
left this Beast Village twice on two
yes,
separate occasions. And every time he leaves the Beast Village, the elders are like, "Oh, by the way, take this very ancient, very awesome, very exciting magic item with you when you go." And the first one was like a literal, like, if you've seen Jimmy Neutron Adventures, it was a
yes, yes,
hypercube, which is
yes,
like you could just fit every item that you have in this tiny little fucking cube and take it with you. He fits a house in there,
yep,
which is another. There are so many stupid things, but he fits a house in there, right?
right.
But then the other item you get when he leaves the second time, they're like, "Oh, if you're going to the capital where you're a wanted man, you're gonna have to get a good disguise. So here's an earring that changes your color to blonde."
And that's what he did. He's like, all right, sweet. And he's like, damn, blonde might look good on me, sweet. And
Blondes
and
do have more fun. Let's ruin a wedding, baby.
And that's in the last, I think, 2 episodes. That's all they did. They're like, all right, let's fuck shit up. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, there's gonna be no adversity. He's gonna wipe the
Nope.
floor with them, and he's just gonna win. And disappointingly enough, I know I'm rushing this along a little bit, but there's nothing really to talk about. They just win.
He just
They
does.
they just win. He kicks the shit out of everybody. He gets to taunt the stand-in for Shar Aznable. He gets to kick his ass and be like, "Huh, not your girl, my girl now. I'm gonna add her to the pile back in my cube." And so
Literally.
and it's so funny because the entire time this is happening, there is like kind of implied what's going to be a main villain in the background. There's just some hooded dude who's like stealing griffin eggs, and he's watching this all go down. He's like, yes, yes, interesting, and that's all he
Yeah,
does. That's
he's weird. He's
That's
weird.
the,
He's been
but
around all season. He's been lurking in the chat. He's been just like sitting
lurking in
there
the chat.
while everything's just going on around him, and he's just got these red eyes, and he takes a friend out to like. I think he's been getting dragon eggs. Actually, he's been riding
Oh, Dragon Age,
griffins.
yeah.
But he's been like collecting dragon eggs for some stupid reason, which hasn't been revealed yet. And he's just very, very sexually interested in Rio, as is everybody else in this show. And while Rio's like ransacking this wedding and ruining everything, he's like, "Let's see if he's got the spunk to do this himself." And then he does, and he's like, "Impressive."
Yeah, and then it's and you know, so that's I thought they were gonna kind of end on that note, right? You know, good like because that would have been a decent enough note to end the show on, where it would have been like, all right, Rio's just plowing through everyone right now, things are going his way, but there's a real challenge, like, and he's gonna step the fuck up next season. That would have been a great place to kind of wrap things up, because that's like a cool thing for the audience. Like, yeah, we know he's our boy now. That's not where they ended the show. They ended the show on something significantly stupider. As we talked about way more in the 3 episode rule, and we touched on here, the whole show is an isekai, but you kind of forget about it because Haruto, the Japanese kid who died, who inhabits Rio's subconscious now, has almost no bearing on the story. He comes up so infrequently. And I guess he's gonna come up a little more in season 2, you know, with the whole spirit connection, because the spirit only calls Rio Haruto, so it's like, okay, this might come in somewhere. But how this series ends, there's 3 girls who get basically isekai'd out of Japan into this world. They get kidnapped by slave traders. Rio sees the caravan. He's like, I'm suspicious of this now. And he hears the girls speaking Japanese in like the caravan. So Rio just pulls out his sword and just murders the entire slave crew.
He murders everybody because he heard them
brutally.
Because which like you reminded me of, because he heard the captives talking Japanese, and he speaks to them, and they're like, you know Japanese too? Because they're all like, you know, they've been, as you said, isekai'd.
Into this world.
Which means they like all are just like Japanese people that are now just in a fantasy world with different bodies. And
because this is an anime that's made after 2010, so there's like a 50% chance of that happening now. Anyway.
Yes. And then Rio is like, oh, is this all of you? Like, I saved all of you guys. Cool. I'm really cool. And they're like, yeah, there's one more of us in that caravan over there. And he's like, okay. And he opens the door. And at that moment, he's like, Michan? Which is Haruto's love interest.
Yes, Haruto's interest before he got hit by the train bus. And next thing you know, that's where the series ends. They're like, oh no, there's another girl. I'm like, this is not the interesting part. There's already 15 girls clamoring for, you know, a ride on Haruto's blade, if you will. And next thing you know, there's another one. I'm like, this is not the interesting part. There's a guy collecting dragon eggs with an explicit interest in Rio who wants to kill everybody. Why are we focusing on this? But that's where the show decided to end. And
which I guess makes sense, because it is kind of like it does kind of, you know, answer some sort of question, because, you know, at the very beginning of the show, there's like a lot of references to like, oh, like Haruto and Michan, his like love interest, like in a different universe.
Right.
And like Haruto dying and becoming, of course, Rio in this fantasy world. So there's a bit of at the top, but they really don't keep that for long enough throughout the entire show to keep that at top of mind. Yeah.
For it to really have any consequence in the story, because it doesn't.
And also, we left a little piece out in that Latifah is also somebody that has been isekai'd, also from Japan, and it is revealed that she is the little girl on the bus that
died with Haruto.
Died with Haruto on that bus, plane, train, airplane, taxi crash, and you know,
it was a spectacle. Let's just go with a spectacle.
It was a spectacle.
Anyway,
indeed.
yes, we did forget to mention that, but you know, they have some cute moments where they're like, "You're Japanese too?" It's like, word. don't know what we're gonna do with this information because now I'm
What
a
are all these
fox.
Japanese people doing in this fantasy land? Is anybody else?
Exactly.
Like, is everybody like in this fantasy land from Japan? Like, when are we
they
gonna
all-
see some like, I don't know, some like Canadians show up?
Just get a Canadian get isekai gets there like, oh, this is getting pretty weird, eh? Just a dude straight off from Toronto, I'd be so happy.
All these people speaking Japanese to me, eh? I don't know what they're saying.
I have no idea what they're saying.
Where's the you got any poutine?
Given this world, yes, because there's fucking spaghetti everywhere. So I can imagine there's one guy in the back just whipping up some poutine. I don't know.
I'm sure Rio could generate some poutine, or a poutine salesman specifically that sells poutine in the bathhouse that he has constructed with his bare hands.
He shouldn't even be trying to save the world or anything. He should just open up his own poutineery in the middle of this fantasy world and make bank, and then just like chill out, pick one love interest, and then we're good. That's the show I want.
Yeah. And just live his life. I mean, like that sounds just about perfect. Like he like makes some poutine every day for the people, then just goes to bed, just has a nice time, makes a lot of money, invests well, you know?
Yeah, the spirit girl's by his side every night. Latifah's working the kitchen and she's running shit, like being the really aggressive, like, head chef in the kitchen. God, that'd be fantastic. I want
She's
this
got that
show.
business vibe. That's a much better show.
There's actually a show we need to watch now because this show is essentially that, but instead of fucking off, it's like one hero and a girl from a party. This came out in fall, and I haven't watched it yet, but I really have to. It's on our queue in Funimation. We can watch it together sometime. It's just some dude fucking off going, I'm gonna start a pharmacy. Fuck you guys.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. You told me about this show before.
There was two of them.
Oh.
There was one in the season in summer, which was that one was just not good, but I watched the whole thing because why not? And then the one in the next season, which I'm actually pretty excited for. That one looks like it's going to be pretty good, so very excited about that. So there is good shows out there with the same funny enough, even with us joking around, I'm like, some guys are listening. But anyway, with a good 40 minutes of us trying to get through our emotions and how we feel about the show, that was basically our discussion on Spirit Chronicles. And I'll be honest, this is probably the first time I came into an episode of Bad Anime really not knowing how I feel about a show. Because as I touched on a lot with Spirit Chronicles, there is so many moments here.
Yeah.
Or I'm just like, this could have been something pretty darn good. Not great, but pretty darn good. So and for me right now, because we always have to ask ourselves the question: is it bad? This is way harder than I thought.
It's actually very difficult to answer because when we did the 3-episode rule, right? I was sitting there like, okay, like it's whatever. I'm not going to continue it. It's fine. It's fun to laugh about and it's fun to talk about. So I mean that was my big stance when we did it last time. But now that we've gone a full 12 episodes, and now that I have recorded my feelings during all those 12 episodes and how I felt emotionally after every single one and my level of investment, now it leaves a difficult decision of me being in a position to call this a bad show. But I'm not sure if I'm there yet. I think if I right now, giving you my opinion, it is not bad. It is not bad, and I hate that I have to say that, but it really isn't like horrible. It's palatable. It has some things, and I think the charm of it is that it's very fallible, and it has a lot of flaws where it could be fixed, and it moves at such a fast pace. But in a way, it's a little satisfying, and there are some things there that I do like. I think the reason for me why it isn't bad is because I just think it's so funny to watch.
For me, there's one thing, and there's one word really for me that sums up the whole show and sums up my feeling about it. Charm. It's not a ton of it, but this show does have charm to it. And there's some things about these characters, even though you have to like really pay attention to get these aspects of these characters, there's some interesting choices here, and there's general intrigue, and I feel myself intrigued. It's super narrow. I cannot call the show 100% bad. I can't do it. I can't do it. It's just it is a hair away. It is a pubic hair away from being bad, but it's just the charm and you can tell because this series was a long-running book series beforehand, people clearly cared about it.
Mhm.
But, there was, of course, the execution was sloppy. It was like a really sloppily cooked steak, but it was just seasoned really well. So it's like, okay, you saved it here with the seasonings, but, you
Right.
should work a
Right.
little harder
Like
next time
I didn't have to send it back. I didn't have to send it back.
I didn't send it back.
I was just
I
I was
enjoyed.
just a little disappointed with how the meal turned out, and I was a little disappointed with how much I spent for the meal. But at the end of the day, I had a pretty good time. I had a pretty good time. It was a fun experience, I guess.
It was a good experience. It was a generally a fun experience, and I don't know if I'll watch all of season 2, but I'm gonna check out season 2 most definitely because I have to see like where they're gonna try to take this. You know what I mean?
So
So
that's the thing, Rob. That is the thing. I think it is in our best interest
okay,
to watch and podcast every season of this show because I just like that we've gotten in the ground floor on something like this.
yeah.
And now that we've done the first season, that we did a 3-episode rule, we may as well just keep watching it. We
I mean,
may as
sure,
well just do
yeah,
the
fuck
whole
it.
thing
Fuck it,
because why
why
not?
not?
Because why not?
Yeah, fine. Yeah, no, it's a great point. Honestly, okay. So coming in a future episode of Bad Anime Spirit Chronicles season 2 or whatever the hell they decide to call it.
Are we invested yet? Maybe. We'll tell you.
I'm a little invested, honestly.
Yeah.
But mine comes from curiosity more than genuine engagement. It's just such a
Me too.
strong sense of curiosity where I'm like,
I'm
where
just
do you
looking
take this story?
like, what are they gonna do? Number one, will there be a conflict in season 2? I think that is the big thing that I'm going to be searching for. I'm going to be on safari for conflict.
they kept building up the fucking dragon guy, so I pray he comes into the story at some point. I pray he does something. Jesus.
Like, okay, so our big questions coming out of this, because this show left me with just a lot of questions.
Yeah.
What's Rio gonna do with Mi-chan? What's Rio gonna do with Mi-chan? What is going to happen there? What is everybody else going to do right now that Rio is not at their village? I'm talking about like 3 to 4 villages of people that are just like, so when's Rio coming back?
When's
I
our
don't
boy
know.
coming back? He's leaving
When's
us.
he coming back? Where is he going to travel to next? How many hearts is he going to break next season? And is he going to finally reach his goal of finding the clitoris? He's been on a search for it for a lot of different episodes across many terrains, across many places. Is he finally going to get it?
That wasn't fair. I was sipping a beer while you said that, and I almost spit it all over myself. And now to be extra unfair to you, I have to piss really bad, so I'll let you wrap up the episode.
Very good. I'll wrap up the episode. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's Bad Anime Spirit Chronicles Season 1. We will catch you next time and probably start to review this show when it comes out with a Season 2. If you like the episode, you know what to do. Hit us up. Email us, badanimepod@gmail.com, at badanimepod on Instagram. We got a TikTok, at badanimepod there if you want to send us a dumb video. Whatever you'd like to do. Keep us in your thoughts. We'll keep you in ours. Kiss, kiss, love, love. Leave a review. Be my baby.
In your ear. Podcast Network.